Mistake. Why did aid restart only a few days later?
Again, we would take complete issue with what would some call reporting and others call a hatchet job.
In a moment that shook the nation, a catastrophic mistake was made within the Pentagon, one that cost not only millions of dollars, but more tragically lives. A simple misunderstanding at the highest level of government led to the halting of vital military aid to Ukraine, leaving soldiers stranded and unprepared in the face of Russian aggression. The fallout was immediate, and when Congress got involved, the truth came crashing down.
Believing every headline you read.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it? I think the American people can see why I'm so concerned about this incompetence.
The issue began when the confusion surrounding a supposed directive from President Trump led to military aid being halted. This was done under the assumption that the president had issued a clear command to cease all aid to Ukraine. However, in a well-functioning system, such a monumental decision would have been questioned and clarified before taking such drastic action. Instead, vital military shipments heading to the front lines were turned around, resulting in millions of dollars lost and leaving Ukrainian soldiers without the equipment needed to protect themselves and fight back against Russian aggression. This mistake wasn't just about money, it was about the failure to understand the gravity of a situation. The consequences of this error were significant. Not only did it waste essential resources, but it also undermined trust and confidence in the leadership. Once the confusion became public, the response was met with harsh criticism. Instead of acknowledging the depth of the mistake, the official involved deflected responsibility, brushing off the incident as the result of fake news. This response failed to address the real issue, the operational incompetence at the highest levels. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill took it upon herself to hold the official accountable. In her testimony, she pointed out the disastrous consequences of this operational mistake. She questioned the official's ability to manage a crisis of this magnitude, demanding an explanation for why such an important decision was made without verifying the facts. Her sharp questioning focused on the negligence of the Pentagon leadership in dealing with the crisis. Sherrill's line of inquiry was direct, and she made it clear that such a mistake should not have happened, especially considering the high stakes involved. The questioning then shifted to a broader issue: leadership within the Pentagon. According to reports, within weeks of assuming office, the Pentagon's leadership team was thrown into turmoil. The Secretary of Defense fired two of the most senior military leaders in the country, C.Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Lisa Franchetti, the chief of naval operations. Without providing any clear explanation, these sudden and unexplained firings raised serious questions about the stability and competence of those in charge. Even more concerning, the dismissal of Brown, who was black, and Franchetti, who was a woman, prompted accusations of discrimination. The lack of any explanation or justification for these firings left a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the Pentagon. The absence of leadership in these critical positions continued for months, further highlighting the dysfunction within the Department of Defense. Reports suggested that qualified candidates for the role of Chief of Naval Operations were hesitant to take the position, citing the uncertainty and the lack of proper leadership at the top. These events illustrate a pattern of operational failures that led to chaos in the Pentagon, from the delayed aid to Ukraine to the unceremonious removal of senior leaders. It's clear that the lack of communication, poor decision-making, and lack of accountability have plagued the Pentagon's operations. Congresswoman Sherrill's questioning brought these issues into the spotlight, exposing the failures that are far beyond simple administrative errors. The impact of these mistakes goes beyond the Pentagon's budget, extending to the lives of soldiers on the ground and the reputation of the United States military leadership. As the hearing continued, the consequences of these failures only became more apparent, and the story of operational incompetence at the Pentagon deepened. The public was left questioning how such a series of missteps could have been allowed to happen under the watch of those in charge. The Pentagon's credibility and ability to manage critical operations were at the heart of the issue, and Congresswoman Sherrill made it clear that such mismanagement could no longer be ignored. The testimony continued as Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill's sharp questions moved from operational failures to budgetary incompetence. The consequences of the Pentagon's mismanagement went beyond wasted resources and poor decision-making. It extended to the very heart of the United States military budget. Sherrill focused on the delayed submission of the defense budget to Congress, a crucial issue that severely impacted the ability of lawmakers to complete their work on the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, and appropriations bills. The Pentagon's inability to meet its deadlines created a ripple effect that hindered the timely allocation of funds needed for essential military programs and acquisitions. This delay was not a minor oversight. It directly contributed to the disruption of vital military operations and jeopardized the country's ability to fund critical defense projects. Without a draft budget submitted on time, Congress was left in limbo, unable to proceed with the necessary financial authorizations. The situation exacerbated an already delicate and complex process, highlighting a level of negligence in budgetary planning that was deeply troubling. Sherrill's questions then turned to the Pentagon's spending priorities, which, according to reports, were seriously misguided. She pointed to the millions of dollars spent on vanity projects that did not contribute to the military's core objectives. One such example was the retrofitting of a Qatari jet to serve as Air Force One. The cost for this project was a staggering 0 cents, a sum that could have been better utilized to address pressing security challenges. The project, which seemed to be more of a personal favor for President Trump rather than a necessity for national security, symbolized the Pentagon's disregard for financial responsibility. Sherrill also mentioned the $40 million 0 cents military parade in Washington, D.C., which many viewed as an unnecessary extravagance. The parade, which had no strategic or military value, further demonstrated the Pentagon's tendency to prioritize unnecessary projects over critical defense needs. It seemed as though resources were being funneled into personal or political ventures rather than being directed towards areas that would strengthen the country's defenses. The wastefulness did not end there. Sherrill brought attention to the bombing campaign in Yemen, which cost approximately $1 billion 0 cents. Despite the substantial expenditure, there was no clear or strategic gain from the operation. In fact, just 1 week after the campaign, missile strikes were being launched in Israel, further compounding the notion that the funds spent on these operations could have been better allocated elsewhere. The focus of the Pentagon appeared to be scattered, with resources being allocated to high-profile projects that lacked clear military objectives, all while ignoring more pressing threats to national security. Sherrill's line of questioning painted a damning picture of the Pentagon's priorities. While money was being spent on flashy and costly projects, the real threats facing the United States, such as the growing power of China, emerging global conflicts, and cybersecurity challenges, were not being given the attention or funding they required. The failure to address these issues only highlighted the Pentagon's inability to adapt and respond to the rapidly changing global landscape. At the heart of Sherrill's questioning was a simple but devastating point. The Pentagon was wasting vast sums of money on vanity projects, and in doing so, it was putting the country's security at risk. The lack of financial accountability, the misplaced priorities, and the failure to properly fund essential programs were all part of a larger pattern of dysfunction. Sherrill's questions ended with a final brutal inquiry: what priorities had been sacrificed to pay for these extravagant projects? The answer, according to Hegseth, was that the Pentagon made trade-offs every day. But Sherrill was not satisfied with this vague response. She pressed for more details, asking exactly what areas had been cut in order to fund these questionable expenditures. Yet, once again, Hegseth deflected, offering no concrete answers. The lack of transparency and accountability in the Pentagon's financial decisions was becoming more evident with every passing minute. This line of questioning, coupled with the earlier discussions about operational and managerial incompetence, painted a clear picture of a department in turmoil. The Pentagon, an institution responsible for the safety and security of the nation, was mired in dysfunction. Sherrill's relentless pursuit of answers exposed a disturbing reality. Under the current leadership, the Pentagon was not only failing to meet its operational goals, but also squandering taxpayer money on projects that served no strategic purpose. The question remained: how long could such a system continue to operate before it became a direct threat to national security?